we'll get started on a conversation between the colleagues who we've got present today, and we will begin with introductions. My name is Bryony Randall, and I am Professor of Modernist Literature here at the University of Glasgow. But I'm joining you today not in my capacity as an airline pilot, although I know it looks like it, but as Dean of Graduate Studies for the College of Arts. And that means that I'm the academic lead for all our postgraduate research students in the College of Arts across all our arts and humanities disciplines. So I direct the graduate school that all our arts and humanities research postgraduate students are part of, and direct looking after everyone's academic progress, support, pastoral care, and so on. And I'm delighted to have three colleagues with me, three members of our community with me today. So I'll ask them to introduce themselves in turn. First, maybe Leslie, will I hand over to you to say hello?
Sure. Hello. My name's Leslie Watson, and I'm the graduate school manager in the College of Arts. So that makes me the administrative lead for the graduate school. Myself and my team look after PGRs across the college, and we deal with things like training and funding and providing student support for you whilst you're here. So I will pass over to one of our lovely students. I think we'll go Densua first.
Okay, my name is Densua Tordzro, and I'm a first year PhD student with School of Modern Languages and Cultures. My PhD is in textiles, decolonizing textiles, naming symbols and giving meaning to in the Ghanaian and Scottish context.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Densua. And then finally, we've got Jessica.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jessica Leeper. I'm a final year PhD student, and I'm also an international student from the United States.
Fabulous. And remind us what your PhD nearly complete.
Yeah, so sorry. Forgot that important bit. So I study medieval history. I focus on the 6th century, specifically the writings of Gregory of Tours, and with an emphasis, it's kind of an interdisciplinary approach called the cognitive science of religion.
Fabulous. She's nearly there. So what we're going to do in this chat is just have a general conversation about the PGR experience here at Glasgow, and so that we can get the most from having two people at different ends of their PhD journey. And Leslie and I will be able to give some input about some more of the institutional structural things. Again, I see that we've got people from right just across the country in Edinburgh, from Dublin, China, Canada. You're all very welcome. Again, if you have any questions at all that arise, please put them in the chat and we'll be happy to answer them. But we thought we'd start by talking about the beginning, and it would be really good to hear from Jessica and Densua why you applied for a PhD at Glasgow. What led you to make that application? Because I think you have possibly quite similar stories from a certain perspective. So Densua, do you want to start?
Okay, so I did my MPhil in Glasgow Uni, and I thought Glasgow Uni is the best place to do my my PhD. My PhD is a practice based, and I'm a part-time worker at a school of education, and I thought why not complete by doing my PhD in Glasgow Uni, since it's got a very good educational system here. And so I applied to the James McQueen Smith scholarship, and I got it. So that's how I'm here.
Brilliant. And then there was a process, wasn't there, of identifying supervisors that were going to be able to support your project. That I think was quite a useful way. It was an interesting process of finding people to support your interdisciplinary project. Is that right?
Yes, yeah, it's really interesting because I've done my MPhil in education, so I thought because my PhD is based in textiles and arts, why don't I move away from education and go into College of Arts and look for go into the actual research that I want to in terms of textiles and the art. So I was looking around and I was kind of worried. And then my husband was a former student, a PhD, he's also a graduate, a PhD graduate. And he said, why don't you ask Rachel Douglas? And I was like, I'm feeling shy. I don't know how to ask her. And I don't know. She said, send her an email. For months, she said, send her an email. So finally I did. And she was so happy to hear from me and recommended the second supervisor, which is perfect to my field, because she is into textiles and the museums, which works so well with what I'm researching in. And she has so much knowledge in tartans and Scottish history, so it helps me in terms of looking for supervisors. So that's how lucky I got.
Yeah. It's so interesting, because I think it's really interesting, the projects we've got represented here, because yours is such an interestingly interdisciplinary project. And obviously you've come with a wealth of experience from working and studying in other areas, which a lot of our PhD students do, and then find a home in the College of Arts because we're able to supervise across disciplines. And maybe we'll talk a little bit more about finding supervisors for people who maybe don't already have the connections at the institution. But Jessica, yours, I think, if I'm right, I know it has interdisciplinary elements as well, but you've maybe had a similar experience of having already studied at Glasgow and carrying on with us in that way. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct. So I did my MLit degree from Glasgow, and I had done early modern history, but I was a little burnt out from it. And during my MLit, I was able to take other courses with other lectures. And in one of the courses, Constructing Faith in the Middle Ages, is how I got to know both of my current supervisors. And so I had one of the essays that I wrote for that course really piqued my interest. And so when I was looking for PhD supervisors, I approached both of them, and it was a good fit for all of us. And so that's how I ended up in the field that I am now.
Brilliant. And those personal connections can be, of course, really important, but we kind of recognize that probably most of the people in the chat today maybe they haven't already studied at Glasgow, and they might be coming up to it from the outside. So maybe I'll say a little bit about, if you think, okay, I've got a project in mind, I've got an idea for a PhD that I think is feasible, and I've got a research proposal of a couple of pages with a little bibliography that shows that I've got a real sense of what I might do. How do I go about identifying someone who might supervise it? And one thing to note is that here at Glasgow, everybody has at least two supervisors. Some even have three, but you always have at least two supervisors. So the thing to do is to use our Find a Supervisor search engine that we have at the university that Vivian's just posted in the chat, and that will direct you if you have. So it may be that your current tutors, lecturers have recommendations of people who they know at Glasgow who might be interested, which is great. If you don't have that already, then use our search engine to identify people who you can see have shared research interests, because you're obviously much more likely to get a positive response and a good match that way. And then you are always very welcome to email an individual direct, explaining your situation, explaining that you're looking for supervision, outlining your project, and asking if they'd be interested in seeing a research proposal and a CV. And that will be the normal way that you'd approach a supervisor, is to send a short research proposal, say a couple of pages, and a CV, a little outline of perhaps how you came to this topic. And that will enable the potential supervisor, to identify whether it is something that they have got the capacity, the numbers, and the expertise to supervise. And if not, what often happens in my case is, if there's somebody who approaches me with a project that I think is interesting, but maybe isn't squarely in my area of expertise, I can direct them to colleagues who might be better placed to supervise. So that's a recommended way of finding a supervisor. And then when you've got a supervisor who is keen to supervise and interested in the project, then you know that when you make your application, when it comes through, if it's accepted, you've got a supervisor lined up already. Some of the other things that we were going to talk about under this heading was how you chose your PhD topic. But I guess for both of you, Jessica and Densua, it followed, you've talked a little bit about that already, it followed from previous study. I don't know, how difficult did you find it to kind of scope something that was definitely a PhD, there was definitely a kind of PhD shape and that was definitely feasible in that time? Does anyone want to jump in with some thoughts on that? Because that can be quite a challenge, I think. Who's going? Oh, Jessica's disappeared. Oh, she.
Sorry, I meant to pick the unmute button.
Over it, Jessica.
I was gonna say, I think the difficult bit for me was I had never taken anything like cognitive science perspective. So, and I think that was one of the questions we were also going to like discuss, was what has been a challenge. And I'm trained as a historian. This is what I've been trained for as undergrad, master's. So one of the difficulties and also rewards has been teaching myself new research methods and new disciplines and how to apply it in an interdisciplinary approach. So
very interesting. Yeah, great one. There are definitely challenges along the way on the PhD journey, but also rewards when you meet those challenges, right? Now, Densua, do you want to talk a little bit about how your project arose and how it was kind of shaped?
Yeah, mine is a practice-based research, and it's like it's my day-to-day thing. Mostly, I realized that I come from an oral knowledge background, so I felt that most of the things that I know are not recorded. So whilst I was doing my MPhil, I did a lot of ethnographic recordings of most of the indigenous knowledge that I have from Ghana that is not mostly recorded. For instance, things I learned from my grandmom in terms of our history. Most of our histories are embedded in songs. So instead of going to read, you have a history of how our forefathers got their knowledge, how our forefathers handed us over into slavery and how we got ourselves out, so on and so on, all embedded in songs. And then the knowledge of textiles, then some of them are embedded in songs. And I realized that we are losing that in our culture. And most of the histories are getting lost because people are not tapping into the old to learn our history, except the ones that we are reading from books. So I did my MPhil in that area, even though it's my work I do it every day. I said, why not do it and record it for future use, or as a recording, as something that people can fall on. It's okay, at this point in time we had this. So when I did my MPhil, it turned out right, and I said, okay, why not? There is still a lot that I had to do, and there's a lot of information there that needs to be recorded, that needs to be researched. So I was looking to realize that there was a connection between Ghana and Scotland during colonial times. These are connections that most people, even in Ghana, are not aware of. So why don't I bring it to the fore? For instance, I'm looking at how some of the adinkra symbols are similar symbols in the Celtic symbols, those kind of things. So I started looking and said, okay, there is something here. I've done some, so the baseline is my MPhil. Why don't I build on it and see if I can move forward with it and record these things, archive them, or put them in some sort of a knowledge system that can be fall on in future. It also can be a knowledge, something that somebody also can take up and move on with. So that's how I chose my research topic.
It's so interesting hearing you talk about it, because I think that this, it's that sense that there is more left to do, that this is research that you urgently need, you can see it needs to be done. Yeah. And that real strong feeling that I can see this work that needs that I wonder if you agree. For me, and having seen more PhD students than I really care to think about now, gone through the process, that's the thing you have to have, that vision of the research that needs to be done, that you want to do, that you can't. The best thing you can imagine spending the next few years of your life doing is alongside all the other things that you do with your life is this program of research. But that's that drive that I think many people have after their masters, as they can see more to do. I was going to just pick up on a query. I think that Viv's responded to a question about collaboration across schools, and somebody who's interested in crossing philosophy and media studies. And I guess what I would say is that absolutely we have all kinds of people working across disciplines, and in the way that Jessica's described, in ways that possibly are quite surprising to them, I might seem to provide a bit of a challenge, but that we would be able to support you in working across disciplines. I thought we'd talk a bit about the wider PGR experience, the PGR community. So what it's like being a PhD student at Glasgow. And I want obviously to hear mainly from Jessica and Densua on this. But I think it's useful for me to say at the beginning, so we have about 500 students in the graduate school at the University of Glasgow. They are an incredibly diverse body. It's one of the things that's so rewarding about working in this area. So there'll be people who come straight through undergraduate, master's, PhD. There'll be people who, like the Densua, also have a kind of professional creative practice that they have parallel to that. There are people who've worked in various areas for years and come back to study. There will be people, many people who have families, who have children, who have dependents. There will be people come from all over the world, and most people will be self-funding. So most people are paying for their own studies, and that's a real level of commitment. I mean, a PhD obviously is a real commitment, but that's a real level of commitment that we really recognize. So our students are incredibly committed, they're incredibly creative, and they're incredibly diverse. And one of the things that's really important to us in the graduate school is to recognize that the PhD is just one thing that a person is doing. Well, I've said that the research is, they're driven to do the research, and it's the thing they want to dedicate themselves to. They're also having lives as parents, carers, as professionals in other areas, and as holistic beings with kind of well-being needs that we want to support. So I guess if I'll maybe ask Jessica and Densua to say a bit about their experience of the PhD community, and then maybe Leslie can say a little bit after that about some of the kind of the structured things that we provide in the graduate school and other levels of the university. So now, Densua, you're just sort of starting in your PhD experience. Do you want to say a bit about how it's been so far and how that community is starting to build for you? Or you'll need to unmute. Where's the button? Okay. Let's see. We still can't hear you, Densua. There she goes.
Okay, I found it. So sorry about that.
Well, honestly, I know it looks like I'm a rocket scientist. It looks like I've got launching into space here, but I'm too going, what? It's just as well I'm not pressing the wrong button. Over to you.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I just started a couple of months ago. So I'm so new. So my first interaction with any of the PGR body is my students from my supervisor's team. So we form a WhatsApp group we call ourselves Team Rachel. And then we have the GSM WhatsApp as well for the larger scholarship body, where we interact, exchange messages and stuff like that. And then the smaller one with Rachel and Sally Tackett and Rachel's supervision team. We also have a small WhatsApp group that we interact. But I am very sure that as my year progresses in my studies, I'll get into more things, because there are a lot of things coming up, workshops and lectures and things coming up, and I'll be meeting people. So I'm sure my my core of friends will grow from, or knowing how meeting other people will grow from there. But at the moment, is the scholarship group and then the Team Rachel group that we have on WhatsApp. And we recently met a couple of days ago as an end of semester kind of get together for the GSM group. And it was good to see people coming from London, Birmingham, and everybody meeting up in Glasgow for this. And it was fun to be, and started talking about our research and how we can, when we're talking about working with other disciplines, like people doing other research, science students, and me doing fashion, somebody doing qualitative something, somebody researching medical, and we are thinking about how do we connect what we do and doing, working together in the end. It may not be in textile, that it may be in something else that I'm engaging, but at least we are working together as members of a team.
Yeah, it's really isn't that interesting how these different cohorts can create really interesting connections you're maybe not expecting. And maybe we just it might be worth just dwelling on this for a moment, because Densua is one of our James McCune Smith PhD scholars. So I don't know if there's a link we can put in the chat to the James McCune, information about the James McCune Smith scholarship. So these are scholarships offered by the University of Glasgow. They began this year for Black home registered students. And it's across all disciplines, and it's a really important initiative of the university that we've enacted as a result of investigating our own, their own diversity and the lack of diversity in some areas of the university. So that's begun this year, and it's running again for next year. So if you fall in that cohort, you're interested in applying, the deadline is at the end of January. So we're really keen to see who might be joining this cohort. And Adens was spoken about how diverse the subject areas are within that scholarship group, and I guess meeting in person must have really, I think it's so lovely now that meeting in person is happening more and really enabling people to get to know each other well. Jessica, would you say you're at the other end of the experience, and you've been with us in Glasgow for a while now? So just if you could say a little bit about the various kinds of communities you've been part of, formed, what's been provided for you, what you've been able to generate.
Of course. So I've been very fortunate to have a lot of new friends, old friends from my MLit program, but the College of Arts and the graduate school and research and innovation, they both offer different workshops. So I've been able to dip into a few of them, and that's how I've gotten to meet other PGRs, both within the arts but also the social sciences. The university has the PhD Society, and they also do writing retreats, which has been good to help keep everyone accountable for their writing once you get to that writing upstage. Also, just within my own department, so the medieval history department, they do seminars, but they also do like reading groups. So we would come together every couple weeks and do different readings and then discuss the readings. And then outside, you've got to take time to get to know one another outside your studies, because we all have different lives. So this is more
before hear COVID. A word of what Jessica is saying. The sound is gone.
It might be your internet connection.
Yeah, we can hear Jessica, Densua.
Sorry.
Never mind. Carrie, I will see if we can have behind the scenes.
I was just going to say the last little bit that I found that was really nice between my own cohort was pre-COVID, we would go and do things like bowling and stuff, just to kind of do outside of studies activities, to take that time for ourselves, for mental health and physical health. But also during COVID, we would get together, and if you're familiar with the game Among Us, we would play Among Us virtually, and we would get on Discord. And that was always fun because you really got to see what your cohort was like. So it's been really good because I've gotten to meet so many friends, both within the academic side and that are going to stay lifelong friends, I think.
It's really nice to see that diversity, and it's so important, because the PhD is in the arts humanities can be quite solitary. It's certainly a kind of very much self-driven experience, and so all of these experiences you've had of of building networks are really interesting, including Among Us, which I've only seen other people play, but it sounds, as you say, could give quite insight into other people's the people's characteristics. Leslie, well, I'll hand over to you to say a bit about the kind of structured support that we provide from the graduate school and elsewhere to our PhDs.
Sure. So on the kind of community side of things, as Bryony says, it's really important to us to help facilitate that for our students. And I think, as Densua and Jessica have kind of said, you kind of find your tribe, as it were, when you're a PhD student, and that might be a group from within your own subject or from different parts of the university. So there are things that we do to help with that. We have at our graduate school College of Arts level, we have drop-in sessions, which are quite informal, and you can come along and meet other students and have a chat to us and eat some cake. We're all about the cake in the graduate school. We also have a thing called PGR Bite Size, which I find particularly interesting. It allows students to come along. It's usually it's been online so far, and just present for 5 minutes on their research. So you get to hear about lots of different research happening across the college. There are activities like that on a wider basis across the university, something called the 3-minute thesis competition, which is presenting your thesis in 3 minutes. And that's run by our researcher development team, who organise activities for students right across the university. So they organise workshops, like Jessica said, but they also organise some kind of social activities. On the kind of student support side of things, part of my role is the PGR advisor for the college. And what that means is that if there's something going on and you don't necessarily want to speak to your supervisors about it, you can make an appointment with me to have a chat, look at different options, look at student support services, and I can hopefully help with that. The university has a wide range of services here for you, from the counselling service, where you can make an appointment to speak to a counsellor, or they've got a wide range of resources on their website. We also have the disability services, who can help put things in place for you should you need that. There's the PhD Society, as Jessica said. We've got the Student Representative Council, who have an advice centre, which is particularly helpful. What else? There's lots at the university. I would recommend, if you haven't already done so, just taking a little bit of time to have a look around the website and just click on different links and have a look at what's on offer. For international students, there is a dedicated student support team who are very helpful in terms of advising on visas and banking and accommodation and that kind of thing. So yeah, I think that's probably about it. Have I covered everything?
Yeah, absolutely. Leslie has a encyclopedic knowledge of all the support areas that we've got going on in the university, and hopefully that gives us a sense of the various levels of support that you be offered, and ways of making sure that you're supported in your studies and you're supported in your well-being so that you can succeed in your studies. Jessica's just done a little endorsement of the bite size there. And you're talking there, Jessica, about a bit of training you did. This is what I do and this is why it matters. It sounds like that fed it straight directly into it.
Yeah, and surprisingly, I didn't do it in preparation for the bite size.
Okay.
So I had done it probably a few months before, and then I was able to use the training skills that I learned in the workshop to apply it for the presentation, because
Brilliant.
Since the bite size is only 3 minutes, how do you get what you do across in 3 minutes, which can be challenging? And
Yeah.
so I found that helpful.
That's so great. I mean, it's such a great title for a workshop. This is what I do, and this is why it matters. It's a really central question for someone doing a PhD. But I thought I might take this opportunity. There's a question in the chat about courses, and I think it's perhaps worth being saying a little bit about how PhDs work in the UK, how they work in Glasgow. So unlike in some countries, so for example in North America, there's no formal taught element of a PhD. The PhD is a single independent thesis. That's the outcome. So you're not assessed on anything beyond the final piece of work at the end of the 3, 4, 5 years that you've generated as an output of your independent research. However, as Jessica's just mentioned, as we've been mentioning, we do offer, in fact, we require students to do some training. So there's some compulsory training that we ask students to do on things like research integrity, information management, equality, diversity, and inclusion, things that are really basic fundamentals that you need to know if you're going to be a successful and ethical researcher. But there's also, after that, we ask you to do a couple of training courses a year in areas like explaining this is what you do and this is how it matters, or technical things to do with qualitative and quantitative research. We have training in public engagement. We have training in editing your work. We have training in quite technical things to do with book handling. But we also, as Leslie's mentioned, at the university level, there are a wide range of courses on broader, I guess, work-life management things. Overcoming perfectionism is a very popular course that's run that lots of PhD students relate to, and overcoming procrastination is another one. So that's the kind of when we talk about courses, that's what we'd mean, courses and workshops. But the PhD program itself has no assessed taught elements, so that's makes it quite distinct from what people might experience in some other jurisdictions, some other countries. What other things do we talk about? I wonder whether Jessica or Densua would be willing to share the best piece of advice they've received since starting their PhD, or something that really stands out as something that's really helped them along the way or getting started. Jessica, is there anything that springs to mind as you reach I wonder if I can... Jessica, are you hearing me? She looks a little bit like the video's frozen, but I might be wrong.
I hear you, but it also looks like
she's there, but she's mute. If we're having connection issues with Jessica, maybe we'll move to Densua.
Can you hear me now?
Okay. Yeah. There are pieces of advice here and there. Some from my MPhil time that I've carried on. It's breathe and give yourself time away from the screen and take it one step at a time. When your eyes are tired and you are having the headaches, just leave the screen and lie down. Even if you're not sleeping, lie down and close your eyes. But somebody like me, those advice, I'm not supposed to say it here, it didn't work. But it's a good advice where you have to relax, because you are writing your thesis, you have a deadline to meet, and you are always panicky. You are in the panic mode and you want to finish, you want to get it right. But I learned that from the advice I've been giving, take it easy, breathe. That way you can do it well. You can write well. You get oxygen into your brain. That makes you do constructive writing. So those are the advice I was given, and I took it. It was a hard thing to do, because that was my first time of doing something like that in research in MPhil. So I want to get it right. I want to get everything right, because my field is something that I don't know somebody else has done. The topic I'm treating and the way I'm going about it, I don't know if anybody has done that. So I needed to get it right. So I kind of worried a bit, but it worked. It was relaxing and breathing, staying away from the screen. When it's really necessary to do so.
Yeah, it's such good advice. We're all human with bodies doing these PhDs, and you absolutely having to look after yourself. And I think that was really, and also what you said about one step at a time, because the PhD can feel like a very big, nebulous, unwieldy thing that you need to get to, but it's built of steps, isn't it? It's built of writing these words down, reading this, writing some more words down. So that's so interesting. So I completely endorse that. I quite like to stand up and do a little bit of yoga every couple of hours if I remember to get the oxygen flowing. We all need it. Jessica, I'm hoping maybe your connection's back with us. Are you back with us?
I am. Can you
Fantastic.
hear me?
We can. Tell us about the best piece of advice that you've received.
Doing a PhD is a marathon, not a sprint. That has always kind of stuck with me. As you guys were talking about looking after yourself, one of the things that I found later in my PhD was going to the gym was really beneficial. Got that endorphins pumping. It made me kind of take time for myself. And then to also reflect on my work while I'm working out, because I love the elliptical. So that was time that I could just kind of think and process what I was doing or what I'm doing. But I think as everyone else has said, take time for yourself. Like, you have to look after yourself in order to produce good quality work.
Yeah. It's so important, isn't it? And it's something that I know that I was going to hand over to Leslie, because Leslie has many years of experience of supporting students here, just in case you wanted to add to anything about this good advice that we might share.
It's all brilliant advice. I have lots of advice, as I think Jessica knows. I'm not so good at taking my own advice, but I think one of the things that I'm pretty sure I said to you, Jessica, at one point was eliminate the word should from your vocabulary. That I should be doing this. Oh, I shouldn't be going out. I shouldn't be taking time for myself. No. You absolutely need to take time for yourself. You need to take breaks, or you'll burn out. And that's no good for anybody. Also, I would say if you do find at any point that you're struggling, please reach out to your supervisors, to fellow students, to us in the graduate school. You're better to reach out at an early stage so that we can help. That's what we're here for. So yeah, and enjoy it.
That's right.
You're getting to do an amazing thing, taking the time to research something that maybe nobody else has ever researched before. It's an amazing thing doing a PhD.
Yeah. It is that, and I think that's really important point about the kind of layers of support that you have. You'll hopefully, your relationship with your supervisors is of course foundational and really crucial, and that should be super supportive. But there are also lots of other people in the university to provide input. I wondered if we might move to talking a little bit about Glasgow, because there are people here from across the globe who maybe don't know the city, and invite. All of us here have got have different have come from different places to Glasgow, or not moved very far at all. So maybe Jessica, do you want to kick off with some thoughts about how you feel about Glasgow, what it's like as a city and a place to be a student?
So when I first came to Glasgow, I was very fortunate in the sense that my husband came with me and we did our masters together, and then we did our PhDs in the same department together. But that was it. We didn't know anyone. We just had our cats. And over the 8 years of living here, we have formed a community that has been a good group of friends that we do holidays with, and just they've become family pretty much. And so I know the others will say this too. Say it first, but people make Glasgow, like, it is very true. A lot of the people here remind me of those back home. Very talkative, will come ask you questions, very helpful. And the city is very easy to access, whether you want to go to the Highlands for a day, or you want to go to like Stirling Castle, or go down to Carlisle, England for a day. There's lots of options to do in Glasgow.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's one of the things. So I'm not from Glasgow. I moved here 15 years ago, but that's one of the things I feel about it. It's such a manageable size city. It's big enough to have so much going on. But as Jessica says, you can jump on a train or a bus and be in the most, honestly, some of the most beautiful landscape on the planet within a couple of hours. It's an absolute privilege from that point of view. Now, Densua, I think you have a brilliant story about an early experience in
Yeah.
Glasgow that I feel relates a lot of the spirit of the city.
Yeah, yeah. I joined my husband here early 2000s, and then we went to town, and he had to leave me and the kids. So I got lost a bit, and I know the address to where I'm going to. And I was asking around. This elderly woman was able to walk me all the way to a point where she could point where I was going to me. And all along was chatting with me as if we've known each other forever. And that was something that struck me, because back home you meet people and you greet them and they respond and they chat with you like you know each other, but you don't. And we had a beautiful conversation where when she said, but she even stood there to watch if I was going to the right place. She pointed to me, and for me it was so strange, because I felt, oh, everybody is busy out here, why would somebody spend their time looking out for me like that? So I kept going and turning around, and she, until the point where I got to where I was going, and she waved at me, and she was on her way. And that, for me, that lived with me for a very long time. And sitting on a bus or being on the train, people will be chatting with you. What a beautiful weather, and it starts a conversation. They will tell you everything they need to tell you about themselves, or you have a beautiful conversation to where you get off your train. And it goes to say, like, people really make Glasgow, because you don't really, it's a beautiful place. And even the school community, the university community, you get people coming from all walks of life, and we all converge here. And it's like a big, massive village where you meet everybody. You can talk to anybody. You'll be walking, and then you hear somebody speaking something in Ghanaian language, and you hear a bit of Nigerian language, and you hear a bit of everything, and you feel at home. Like, this is a proper global village. I always say when I'm walking around the library, I always say this is a proper global village. That's what makes me love and living and working here in Glasgow. That's one of the beautiful things that I love about Glasgow. The friendliness, and everybody is warm. Yeah.
Yeah. That's such a lovely concept, isn't it? The global
Yeah.
village, and I think that's right. It does have that feeling about it. And as well, of course, as I mean, people may know this already about Glasgow, but it is a real cultural centre.
Yeah.
The music scene in particular. Densua and I were bonding earlier on about how much we enjoy music and dancing, and there's plenty of that if you want it in Glasgow. The theatre, the cinema, and particularly now that things are opening up properly post-COVID, it's really coming back into its own. So a fantastic place to study. We've got 15 minutes left. I know there are a few specific questions in the chat that people are going to be answering. There's a question that I thought I just mentioned, which is about auditing master's courses. If you're a PhD student here, it is sometimes possible to sit in on some master's courses if it's agreed with your supervisor and agreed with the convener of that course. So those are sometimes elements that kind of form part of this training to support your success in your PhD, and then your success in your developing your broader research skills. So those are things that can happen, but it's always important that that's subject to kind of availability and to the recommendation and support of your supervisor. But we thought we'd maybe, since we're talking again a little bit about sort of additional training and input and skills, one of the questions we thought we'd think about is what skills your PhD has given you, or do you feel yourself acquiring on the PhD? Have you learned anything unexpected about yourself since starting your PhD? And one of the things I might frame this by saying is that at least half of our students who do an arts humanities PhD will go into a career that isn't an academic career. the PhD is a brilliant grounding for all kinds of different careers, maybe more obvious things in kind of arts administration, heritage, museums, galleries, obviously in things like kind of maybe other kinds of writing, in policy making. People have gone into businesses of various kinds. The skills that you acquire doing an arts humanities PhD are super valued by employers. And I can offer you a little anecdote from my own experience, although that's going back a little way now. When I finished my PhD years ago, I was sick and tired of a PhD, like any normal human being, because I just, like anyone would be a little bit sick of it by then. And I thought, right, well, I'm not going to be an academic. I'm going to do something else. So initially I thought I might want to be a lawyer. And so I did a law conversion course and realized that while studying law was fascinating, being a lawyer would be a nightmare for me. So I did not want to be a lawyer. So I found myself living in London, approaching a certain milestone age and thinking, what am I going to do? I better start earning a living. So I looked for jobs that included the word research, because what I knew is that I was really good at research. So there was I with my PhD in experimental early 20th century women's writing, and I got a job with the National Audit Office, which is the body that audits the UK government. Not, you would have thought, a natural fit, but anyway, the story is, so I worked with them for a while in the value for money audit, decided I did want to be an academic, and worked my way back into academia through a slogging process of spending a lot of time in the British Library and doing teaching in my spare time. But the point of that story is that it is surprising. You might be surprised at which kind of institutions will value the skills that you've developed as a PhD student. And I should say more, now even more than in the past, because when I was doing my PhD, there wasn't so much an emphasis on training. But now your PhD is obviously the absolute core of what you do. All the skills that you develop in succeeding in that PhD are so widely valued, and there's this scaffolding of all these other skills to do with public engagement, managing projects, working in a team, that you emerge from the PhD having acquired. So yeah, Jessica, do you want to jump in first with that one about the skills that you feel your PhD has given you? Anything you've learned about yourself since you started your PhD?
Yep. So starting off with the skills bit, I think it's only enhanced my communication skills. Most definitely my writing skills. One of the things I still find kind of exciting, even though editing is not exciting, especially when you get to the last bit, you're just tired of seeing the same thing over and over, but you have to continue on to get it ready for that submission date, is I'm always like, oh, I wrote this. I wrote this, which is both rewarding, but also like, look what I've done. And also nerve-wracking, because you know you're about to share it with the wider public, with your examiners, with people that are reading it for just proofreading, to see, you know, your cohort. And so one of the things that I've learned more about myself is I'm more resilient than I thought. And that anything is possible with some perseverance. And for what I'm hoping to do when I'm finished with my PhD is not probably stay in academia, but take over as director of, my husband started a company when he finished his PhD, and I am now currently being trained to take over as the director of an ed tech company. So, but the arts degree has really helped train me to get ready, and I'm looking forward to my future, hopefully.
So exciting, isn't it? So it just goes to show what I mean. I think we can tell how great Jessica's communication skills are, or you know, from chatting to her. But that's so interesting, and just goes to show where a PhD can take you. Now, Densua, I know you. I mean, I know you just started the PhD, but are there skills that you can feel you're interested, you're looking forward to acquiring, or how you think this is going to pan out for you?
Yeah, all right. Like I said earlier on, mine is a practice based, so I'm already living it. And the way I do it is by interpreting research into art. And kind of what we do is we take the research, research, the outcome of a research, and transform it into a theater piece, or transform it into something that is living. So you have the academic writing, and you have something that you can give back to the community that you did the research in. So they can also feel and have a feel of what they have contributed to your work. So I want to still work in that area But these few months that I've been able, I was, like you said, with the permission of my supervisor, Dr. Sally Tackett, I was able to sit in a master's class to observe how they do things, and I was able to contribute in that class, and I felt it was really rewarding. It has also kind of changed my perception or my perspective on how PhD works, and that is not just sitting down and writing, but you can also engage with people whilst you are writing, and that you may have your topic, but it keeps shifting, and you keep fine-tuning whatever it is that you want to do along the way. And also it helps when you have friendly supervisors. They keep guiding you in the right way and shaping you in the right way on how to do your work and how to channel your work, the writing, where it should go, who you should go and talk to, and so on and so forth. So for me, I've learned the connections, connecting to people or connecting with people and other researchers, and the way you present. I've watched people do presentations, so I now can. I went to the London African Fashion conference in London the last time, and also saw how some students came to present their work, and it gives me the courage and say that maybe next year or next 2 years I can also go there and present. So yeah, I'm young in the PhD, but drawing on my experience, I feel in the end I may end up being a researcher, or who knows, maybe I may be a lecturer with a different twist.
Yeah, isn't that that's so great when you start seeing, you can start seeing things where you seeing that's going to be me, that's where I can go, and that and through the kind of human connection, and also what you said about the PhD shifting and moving, and that's so important. And I think people often feel quite concerned that the thing that they came to the thing that they presented at the beginning of their PhD is what they've got to do and see this exact thing through to the end. And what you've described is the beginning of this really organic process of and that's how you get the most quality work, right? Because you're actually communicating with people and then hearing back from them, and it's being shaped by these other fields. So it's really interesting to hear you talk about it in that way. I think that's a really familiar experience of PhDs. The PhD when it comes out at the other end might not be the way you expected at the beginning, but it'll be better for it. I'm mindful of time, and we've got about 7 minutes left before we have to finish up. What I might do is say a word or two about funding and get Leslie, as usual, to keep me right on anything that I might forget, because I know people might be thinking about and wondering about funding. And then I'm going to end off by asking everybody, all three of my colleagues, to say what their top tip would be for applicants. But I'll mention funding. So as I said, that most of our students are self-funding. There's the stark reality is that there is not an awful lot of funding for PhDs in arts and humanities in the UK. The main UK government funding scheme, administered by something called the Arts and Humanities Research Council, the deadline for that has already passed. You have to start very early to get onto that one. But for people who might be thinking about PhDs maybe starting 2024, then you'd be looking at starting that process around about November time next year, starting to think about applying for that. And that's why, if you're able to plan that far ahead, to start conversations with supervisors about that well in advance is a really good idea. There are a couple of other funding schemes that I'll mention. I've already told you about the James McKean Smith Scholarship that Densua has, and that scheme's running again this year. We also have the Carnegie Scholarship Scheme, which is only for students who have done their undergraduate degree in a Scottish university. So if that applies to you, then the deadline for that is still forthcoming in January. You can talk to prospective supervisors about that. And there's also the China scholarships for people who are residents of China, funded by the Chinese government, and the application for that's a sort of a arrangement with Glasgow, and the application for that is in January, and end of January, maybe February. Leslie will maybe keep me right on that. Is there anything else I've missed on scholarships, Leslie, or any general tips that I need to make sure people have?
I don't think you've missed out any of ours, but we do have, if you go onto the university website, and maybe one of our colleagues can pop it in the chat, there is a scholarships search function, so you can have a look. There are some weird and wonderful scholarships out there for people who have a certain surname or come from a certain village or something like that. So you might be able to find something like that. Some of our subjects have subject-specific scholarships as well, so it's always worth asking your prospective supervisor about that. And I would recommend a website called prospects.ac.uk. They've got some useful information about funding as well.
Brilliant. Thanks, Leslie. And of course, yeah, Jessica's also mentioned that if you are an alumni of Glasgow, there is a discount on the fees, so every little helps. Okay, as we round up, we've got a top. We're thinking about a top tip for applicants. Mine is one I've already given, really, which is that the thing you have to have is a real desire to do this research. There are all kinds of challenges and bumps and things that might make it harder or easier, but that's the core of it. And if you're like, oh, I just fancy doing a PhD, I think, it's probably not going to carry you through. But if you have a real love of your subject, that's the thing that is going to shine through to people who you are talking to, prospective supervisors through your application. So that's my top tip for applicants. I'm going to ask Leslie, then Densua, then Jessica to share their top tips if they will. Leslie, over to you.
Mine is communicate with prospective supervisors and make that connection, because they can help you on your journey to apply for a PhD.
Leslie's other top tip is make sure you've noticed what deadlines.
Yes, always look at the deadlines and read the guidance for any scholarship scheme.
Read the guidance, note the deadlines. Read the guidance, note the deadlines. They're the other top tips. But yeah, which is all part of the communication, I guess. Read the communication. But yeah, absolutely. Be in touch with us. It's what it's all about. Densua, over to you.
Yes, and when you find your supervisors and you write your application before you submit to the scholarship scheme, let them read over it for you. They will be able to spot what you've missed and what you've not. They can read and proofread your application, your abstract, and whatever it is you are writing for the application for you. So that's my bit.
Brilliant. Make the most of that because everybody likes to have their own area of interest. Everyone likes someone to come to them and say, I love what you work on, I want to work with you. When you've got a good match with a PhD student, I can speak from experience, it's an absolute joy. So people are very willing to take the time to support you in that. Great. And Jessica, over to you.
I would have to agree with Bryony in the sense of choose a topic that interests you the most and that you know that you can carry yourself through even in the roughest of times. As a final student, I have gone through COVID, I have gone through my own health issues, and without the support of my supervisors, but also family and friends and all the admin within the College of Arts and the School of Humanities, I wouldn't be where I am today, and it really does take a village to finish a PhD.
It takes the global village that is Glasgow to finish the PhD. We didn't even plan that, right? That's very beautiful. Okay, well, I think the live chat is about to finish and we're coming up to 3:00. I hope people have found this useful. You hopefully have got, you know where to go from the website, all the links that you can follow to get more support from us. But we really look forward to receiving your applications to study with us at Glasgow. It's been a pleasure to have the chance to talk to Leslie and Densua and Jessica about their experience here at Glasgow. And we wish you a very good rest of the day for everyone who's been joining us from across the globe. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.